Welcome back, folks, to WrestleRant, where I give my in-depth analysis of all the pay-per-views that I watch on the WWE Network. Today I'll be wrapping up my reviews of Survivor Series with my review of the 2012 installment as seen on the WWE Network. Like I said in my 2011 installment review, you can check out my review of the 2012 show from when it first happened 2 years ago. What number of edition of WrestleRant it is, I have no idea, but if you want to check it out, it is on here on the channel for your viewing pleasure. But stay tuned for my review with a fresh set of eyes watching the 2012 show of Survivor Series just only a couple days ago and watch my aftermath all these years later. So that being said, kicking off the show is Team Brodus, consisting of Brodus Clay, Justin Gabriel, Tyson Kidd, Sin Cara, and Rey Mysterio, taking on Team Tensai, Primo, Epico, also Darren Young and Titus O'Neil, the Primetime Players, respectively, in a 5-on-5 traditional Survivor Series elimination tag team matchup. So, of course, this card was a little short on matches, much like this year's, much like every Survivor Series. So they had to kill some time with an extra added bonus match, and this was when the tag team division was still flourishing. So they were able to throw in a few tag teams, and Brodus Clay and Tensai, who were eliminated first, which was kind of surprising considering the fact Brodus Clay had just returned to TV. They had been touting the fact that he had some weight loss, and then he's like the first or second one gone. So that was kind of surprising. But even still, though, it was a nice showcase of the tag teams, the Primetime Players, Primo and Epico, Rey Mysterio and Sin Cara, and Gabriel and Kidd. And it would be a clean sweep for the most part, with this aside from Brodus Clay being eliminated. It'd be a clean sweep for the baby faces. That was pretty cool. So Justin Gabriel, Kidd, Mysterio, and Sin Cara would be properly showcased, with Tyson Kidd, I think, picking up 2 eliminations for his team, Justin Gabriel picking up 1, and Rey Mysterio picking up 1 as well. So that was pretty cool. But, yeah, a nice, fun opening matchup that was not advertised beforehand, but it was a pretty cool way of kicking off the show and a showcase of the tag team competitors of the tag team division. So up next, we had the Divas Championship on the line with Eve defending the gold against Kaitlyn. And remember, it was 2 months prior to this that Eve defeated Layla at the Night of Champions pay-per-view, which I reviewed here on the channel if you want to go back and check that out, to win the Divas title. They had a triple threat match at Vengeance the following month, and was it Hell in a Cell, or did they have a Vengeance that year? No, Vengeance was 2011. I'm thinking of 2012. So it was a triple threat match at Hell in a Cell, where Eve emerged victorious still as your Divas champion, leading to Kaitlyn versus Eve one-on-one on this show. Kaitlyn, she was, coming around as a in-ring worker. She was still not great. She's never been great. But she and Eve would continue to tune in their chemistry. They would have a great match a couple of months later on the 20th anniversary of Raw in January in Kaitlyn's hometown of Houston, when she would eventually win that Divas Championship. That's what I kind of liked about the title chase for Kaitlyn, in that her constant shortcomings against Eve for the Divas Championship would eventually mean something when she would win that title in January. So I thought that was pretty cool. So this was an okay matchup. They put forth a good effort. They got about 7 minutes, a little longer than most Divas matches nowadays, or even back then, or ever, basically. But they put forth a good effort, so I give them that. Just people didn't really care. I mean, Kaitlyn and Eve, they had some storyline support with the whole Night of Champions thing. And what was else going on at the time? The attacker thing with Oksana, which they revealed beforehand. Oksana was wearing a blonde wig. She tried to take out Kaitlyn. So they had some storyline support. It was in a little better condition. It was a little better condition than the Divas division a year prior with Beth Phoenix and Eve, who had no storyline support whatsoever. It was just a random-ass Divas title match. So at least this matchup made some sense. They had a good match, but in the end, people just didn't really care. Because unlike Beth and Eve, where that finish had a memorable finish, this matchup really didn't have that. It was Eve going over via dirty tactics, continuing the feud, going into the new year, and that was pretty much it. Up next, for the United States Championship, on the topic of feuds that people didn't really care about, was Antonio Cesaro, now known as simply Cesaro in 2014, defending his United States Championship against R-Truth. Now, R-Truth, by this point in time, he was still somewhat relevant, I guess you could say. I mean, he was easily relevant in 2011, obviously, as a heel, but when he turned babyface in 2012, I was just not a fan of it at all. And I just stopped caring about R-Truth when he went back babyface. And, going into this matchup, he was still doing the crazy thing. Nowadays, he's gone back to being the rapping superstar, which is not doing him any favors whatsoever. But the matchup was okay. It was decent. I mean, R-Truth, despite his terrible gimmick, and I hate his character nowadays as a babyface, despite that, he's a good worker. And he and Cesaro worked well together in this show, or on this show, in this matchup. It wasn't that. I mean, it was a logical outcome with Cesaro coming out victorious, still the United States champion. But much like the Divas title match, people just didn't give a shit. And it's not Cesaro's fault. He tried his hardest to make the gimmick work, the anti-America, the anti-USA thing, holding the U.S. Championship, much like Rusev now, but a lot more people care about Rusev than Cesaro did at that time. But that being said, though, I mean, he had all the promos on YouTube where he would bash America and all the towns that they were in and stuff like that. But it never really made its way to TV. So that was the biggest problem with the push of Cesaro as United States champion in 2012. But at least it would actually have him win matches in 2012. Because remember, going into early 2013, he and whoever was holding the IC title at the time, I think it was Wade Barrett, would lose so many freaking matches at their reigns as Intercontinental and United States champions respectively would mean nothing because they were losing all the time. So, decent match from Cesaro and R-Truth. Good outcome, but I could not have cared less about it. So up next, we have the World Heavyweight Championship up for grabs between Sheamus and the Big Show, much like the Mark Henry and Big Show feud, coincidentally enough, both involving the Big Show. This was the middle match in the feud between Sheamus and Big Show. They had a great match, surprisingly great match at the Hell in a Cell pay-per-view. Easily one of the best matches of the year, in my opinion. Maybe not the best match of the year, but easily in the top 5, if not the top 3, in my opinion. Weird to say that considering it was the Big Show. But they would have this match, and they would have another very good match at TLC. This was a good match, not as good as their first encounter, obviously. Nothing's going to match that atmosphere at Hell in a Cell. It was still a good match, though. The disqualification finish was not all that surprising. Like I said before, people pretty much knew going into this contest it was the middle match in the feud, and it was going to build to a chairs match, which they beat us over the head with, no pun intended, after the contest. After Big Show, I think he cheated to beat Sheamus, and everyone thought that he won. He retained the title. But then it would be revealed that the referee reversed the decision. He got disqualified after accidentally hitting the referee Scott Armstrong, who was actually taken out at the 2009 installment of Survivor Series. So fun fact there for you. But that being said, though, it was a good match for what it was. Disqualification finish, pretty weak, but at least it was better than the low blow in 2011. It was logical, like I said before, to continue the feud, and they would heavily foreshadow a chairs match between the two for TLC after Sheamus beat the living shit out of Big Show afterwards with a steel chair. So that was that. Up next, we had the traditional 5-on-5 Elimination Survivor Series tag team matchup, pitting Team Foley. Foley was not even on his own team. He was just in the corner, because I'll talk about it in a second. But Team Foley consisted of The Miz, Kofi Kingston, WWE Tag Team Champions, Team Hell No, and Randy Orton. As well as on Team Ziggler, we had Dolph Ziggler, of course, Damian Sandow, David Otunga, Wade Barrett, and Alberto Del Rio. So a few notes here. This matchup was originally supposed to be Team Punk versus Team Ryback, or Team Foley, with Ryback on, as the captain of that team. But they changed Survivor Series plans at the very last minute, putting the entire card into a complete state of confusion, an absolute clusterfuck, by making a WWE title match instead, because I guess they didn't think that a pay-per-view would sell on a 5-on-5 elimination tag team match, even though they did that this year. I know the stakes were a lot higher, obviously with Team Authority and everyone's jobs being on the line and stuff like that. It was a little different this year. But, so they changed it. They made it this instead. I didn't mind Foley's presence. I'm a big Foley fan. I was glad to see him in the corner. But aside from one Mr. Sacco to Ricardo Rodriguez at ringside, his presence was not really needed. I'm sure it didn't really sell many pay-per-view buys because he didn't do anything. He wasn't even on the team. So it just didn't make much sense. I mean, if they were going to make a Team Ziggler versus Team Foley, the least they could have done was mention their brief altercation on the... Can't remember what episode it was, but I know it was in January of that year. They had a great back and forth on the mic, in my opinion. Really enjoyed that between Ziggler and Foley. It was very, very enjoyable. So they didn't even mention that. So this matchup was basically meaningless. And David Otunga, whose name is which name is not like the other. It was David Otunga, obviously. His presence in this match was justified in that Cody Rhodes, who was tag teaming with Damian Sandow at the time, a part of Team Rhodes Scholars, was injured a couple days beforehand on an episode of Main Event during a match with Team Hell No and Damian Sandow. So he was taken out at the last minute. David Otunga, why they thought he would be a suitable replacement, I have no idea. He got a lot of TV time at the time, which is kind of surprising considering the fact that 2 years later he's had all of one match in 2 years, which is fucking mind-blowing to me why he's still with the company. But anyway, though, it was a pretty good matchup. I really enjoyed this. Damian Sandow getting the first elimination was kind of surprising. They probably should have gotten fucking Otunga out first and not Sandow. That was kind of ridiculous. But still, though, Miz had just turned babyface, so he was one of the last two remaining for his team alongside Randy Orton. So he didn't have a major role to serve in this contest, but he was kind of spotlighted towards the end. Got a good reaction from the live crowd, so that was pretty cool. some tension teased between Kane and Daniel Bryan. The whole story, part of Team Foley, was if they were going to coexist. Because, of course, Randy Orton hated Mick Foley's guts, Daniel Bryan and Kane hated each other's guts, and Miz and Kofi Kingston hated each other's guts. So it was kind of fitting. So a lot of teasing tension there, and I thought despite that, they would still emerge victorious and pick up the victory. And that was not the case. Team Ziggler would come out victorious after Randy Orton would eliminate Alberto Del Rio with an RKO, who he was feuding with at the time. And Ziggler and Orton would have a great final few minutes of this contest with a lot of reversals, a lot of near falls, a lot of kickouts. It wouldn't be until... Well, I love the finish here, for one thing. Let me go back and backtrack here for a sec. Randy Orton would hit the RKO on Dolph Ziggler. I think a second one. I think he would hit one earlier on in the contest, and Ziggler would kick out or something like that. I'm not really sure. But he would hit Ziggler with the RKO here. And instead of going for the pinfall, the story they were trying to tell, that Orton was trying to add insult to injury by going for the punt instead. And I was marking the hell out when this happened, because it had been maybe like a year and a half since Orton had hit that punt kick on anybody. And they had since banned it from the WWE. He was unable to use it. So for him to go for it even here, I mean, he didn't even hit it. He didn't even connect with it. But for him to even bother going for it, I thought was a pretty cool thing. So he would go for it, and it would backfire on Randy Orton with Dolph Ziggler recuperating in time and hitting the super kick for the clean pinfall, the 1-2-3, Dolph Ziggler, much like in 2014, your sole survivor. So I thought that was a great conclusion to an otherwise very solid matchup. Not the best Survivor Series matchup in recent memory, but I thought it was very well wrestled and a great final few minutes with Dolph Ziggler picking up the biggest win of his career up to that point, and he would follow it up with a big win over John Cena at TLC the following month. So the final few months of 2012 for Dolph Ziggler were very, very notable, especially considering the fact he also retired Chris Jericho at the end of the summer that year too. So great final few minutes of that matchup and very solid Survivor Series elimination tag team match here. And that would bring us to the main event, a triple threat match for the WWE Championship. And the big story being told here was that CM Punk was quickly approaching his 365th day as WWE Champion. Because as I said in my 2011 review of Survivor Series, it was on this show at Survivor Series 1 year prior that CM Punk would win his second WWE Championship. And until then, from that show to this show, he would not lose it. And he was hoping to hit 1 year as champion. That was the whole goal of this contest, and he ultimately would accomplish that goal by winning here after a very pretty good matchup from Cena and Ryback in a triple threat contest. Ryback was, on the fast course to main event scene at this time. He headlined Hell in a Cell that year. He headlined Survivor Series. So they obviously had a lot of faith in the Ryback character to headline 2 back-to-back pay-per-views. So that was, it was pretty cool. As a Ryback fan myself, it was nice to see that he had a pretty strong showing here, even though he didn't come out victorious. And of course, this matchup is very memorable for the fact that the Shield would make their debut. And of course, that was not the name of them when they first came out. No one knew who they were aside from the internet fans. And that Dean Ambrose came out, Roman Reigns came out, Seth Rollins, all being from NXT. They said that Dean Ambrose was from NXT. I don't know about Roman. I stopped watching by that point in time, so I don't know if he was ever on NXT TV before he was called up. Seth Rollins obviously was, so I knew who he was. He was the NXT champion. I knew that. But Dean Ambrose, I think, after FCW shut its doors in early 2012, I don't think he ever made a single appearance on NXT. Correct me if I'm wrong, I just don't think he ever made an appearance on NXT before he debuted with the Shield. So, incorrect calling by Michael Cole. Just as nitpicking here, but still, they made a huge impact in the main event of one of the big 4 pay-per-views, attacking Ryback, putting him through the table, and helping CM Punk retain his WWE Championship, which they would call an injustice that Ryback could think he could go in there and win the WWE title for himself. And the Shield, much like The Undertaker, The Rock, Kurt Angle, and now Sting as well in 2014, Roman Reigns, Seth Rollins, and Dean Ambrose can say that they debuted at the same event as all those other individuals, Sting, Taker, Rock, and Angle, for the greatest of all time in WWE history, or wrestling history, because Sting just freaking debuted. But still, though, for the greatest in wrestling history, they made their name. They made their first WWE appearance on TV at the same event that they did. So that's pretty historical for that reason alone. So they made a major impact on night 1. They would go on to be booked tremendously over the next, pretty much their entire run for the next 2 years before they split up. But, Ambrose, Reigns, and especially Rollins are now doing extremely well for themselves, even now as they film this in 2014. So it's crazy to look back. I mean, the crowd wasn't in shock and awe because they had no idea who these guys were. But it's just amazing to think it was 2 years ago that these three made their initial appearance on WWE TV, and to see how far they've come since then. So a pretty controversial ending to the show. Very much enjoyed the Shield debut, as they would deem themselves, I think 8 days later on Raw. But pretty good main event. On the whole, I thought this, at the time and still to this day, I still think this was a pretty good show. Maybe not a spectacular show, and there were definitely other pay-per-views in 2012 that I thought were better. But on the whole, though, I thought this was a pretty good to great show. The main event was solid. The debut of the Shield was completely out of the blue, and I really enjoyed where that went, obviously. Sheamus and Big Show was good, not worth going out of your way to see. The 5-on-5 elimination tag team match, Team Orton versus Team Foley versus Team Ziggler, I thought was great. So I really enjoyed that matchup. The undercard was kind of weak. I mean, the Divas title match and the United States Championship match, even though they were not all that memorable, the right people went over, so that's all you can really ask for. And I thought the opener with Team Brodus versus Team Tensai was pretty nice as well. So, would I suggest that you go back, watch this pay-per-view in full? Probably not. The first hour is pretty boring, aside from the opener. The only real reason I would suggest you go out of your way to watch this show would be for maybe even just the final hour with the 5-on-5 elimination tag team match in the main event, and especially the debut of the Shield. Everything else is pretty forgettable, really not that memorable whatsoever. But definitely go out of your way to watch that 5-on-5 match, which I thought was pretty good, especially if only for the closing moments with Ziggler winning and the final shot of Foley and Randy Orton in that corner, and Mick Foley looking disappointed, and Randy Orton looking just completely, like he had just lost his dog or something like that. It was a great visual, great facial expression from Randy Orton in this contest after losing. And I still, to this day, think that kind of planted the seeds for Randy Orton's heel turn. I think right after that, it was reported that whole thing and going for the punt kick and losing was kind of the start of the slow burning heel turn for Randy Orton. So they would continue to go back to that well for the next year before he would turn at the 2013 SummerSlam event, which I did review here on the channel. Cheap plug, go back and check that out. But like I said before, check out the final hour of the show. I thought it was very enjoyable and a good show on the whole. So with that being said, folks, it's going to wrap up my reviews of Survivor Series for the month of November. Thanks for joining me from the start to finish. I had a lot of fun watching these Survivor Series shows, and hopefully next November, I can wrap up my Survivor Series reviews by reviewing the installments that I did not get a chance to watch or review for this month. So that being said, in the month of December, I'll be talking about a number of different pay-per-views. My next WrestleRant video in early December will be reviewing the December to Dismember pay-per-view, arguably one of the worst WWE pay-per-views of all time. So I watched that just recently. That's going to be interesting to review. But I'll be talking about that at the start of December. I'll also be reviewing every installment of TLC 2 dates from 2009 to 2013. I'll also be reviewing the Insurrection events from 2000 to 2003, as well as every New Year's Revolution event from 2005 to 2007. So, with that being said, folks, as always, thanks for watching. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. In the meantime and in between time, you can find me on Facebook at Graham Jason Matthews, on Twitter at WrestleRant. And until my next video, folks, I'm Graham Jason Matthews, and I'll see you then.